Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 2025 edition of the monthly Tough Love Arena State of the Game stream. I will be your host tonight, I'm Paul Weeks, co-developer of Tough Love Arena, and I'm here to tell you all about the state of the game. What's going on? So, quickly recap of the past. What did we do since the last dev update? We've been prepping for release. Now, we'll get about this more in the future if this is news to you. But we, thanks to Clove, Davisar, and Kerbokek, we should hopefully have a launch-ready version of arcade mode, along with bonus modding updates. And that was always my blocker to release. So while they're working on that, I'm working on the other miscellaneous stuff that involves preparing for release, like just updating the Steam page. And as many people have requested, updating the Redbubble. We've got pictures of that later. Present. As always, I will include current list of potential character balance changes. This hasn't changed in a minute. I've been busy with other stuff. In particular, I've been traveling a lot recently. So these are all still things I'm entertaining and open to. This hasn't changed. And lastly, what's coming up soon? So we have our annual Halloween tournament this Friday. Usual time for the big tournaments of 6 p.m. check-in, 7 p.m. turning start, all Eastern times. If you haven't registered yet, it's free to enter. Challenge.com/TLA Halloween25, or you'll find it linked in our Discord and some of our socials. We'll post after this, and it will be streamed and run by a friend of the channel, Shiki Beats. As always, you'll get free skins just for entering. If you make top 8, you get all the Halloween skins, or maybe some skins if you already have them all. We'll give you a different season, and the highest placing person who doesn't already have a premium account will get a premium account. So please enter if you haven't. We only do these once every 3 months, and we try and make a big show of it. So I'm looking forward to it. I should have also mentioned in the past, I gave out, apologies for the delay, I did finally redeem the skins from the last event. If you did not get yours, check our Discord announcements channel for more instructions. The Redbubble updates. So, thanks to Elisa, who is my producer on Scramble Heart City. She's been helping me with some of the sort of outside the game for TLA, and in particular, she went into Photoshop and using the new sprites was able to recreate a lot of the designs that Amy originally did. So this is what will be going up on the Redbubble when we release. We'll do just a sudden switch over, remove all the beta merch, and switch to all of the finished merch. If you have any particular requests or suggestions, I'm open to them. Maybe bring them up in Q&A or shoot me a DM. But these are some of the ones that we currently have planned. Tentative release for arcade mode is late October. If that changes, we'll keep you updated. And it might still have some rough spots, but we want to get something out, get it in front of people, give them a chance to report bugs, and assuming there's no huge major fires that require a total redo, I plan to transition the game out of beta sometime in November. The hard deadline is end of year, so I'm optimistic about releasing it in November. Worst case, early December. We do not have a monthly survey because of reasons I will explain in just a moment, so apologies for that. And now the Scramble Heart City update. So last month we attended Tokyo Game Show. And by we, I mean me and a bunch of other people from New York. Me and a bunch of other indie devs went in with this cool branch of New York State called Empire State Development and their tech branch. And they helped sponsor a big booth for all of us to share over in Tokyo. And we did a bunch of other events together. It was really interesting. And here is a brief clip that I recorded on my phone just because there was this one young Japanese player who was very excitable. So we'll play a few minutes of this, or a little bit of this. You can see in the background some of my friends' games, like Captain Corgi and Unwound. We had these special sheets made up. Actually, ooh, let me see if I can show these. Where are they? They're in this suitcase. One second. I'm still in the process of unpacking. So if you've been to any of our offline events, we have these little how to play instructional cards that look like this. There's a side for gamepad and for stick/leverless. And so we had them, wrong one. We had them localized, translated to Japanese. We gave these out as little souvenirs to some of the players who were really into it on the last day. If you see me at an event and you really want one of these, maybe I'll give it to you as a little piece of memorabilia, because I probably don't need them because I don't know the next time we're doing a Japanese event. And by that time, we'll probably have a new design. I've got a bunch of these older handouts, so I thought they might be cool little Easter egg merch ideas or giveaways or something. Let me just check if everything's working. Yes. Okay. Cool. So it was interesting. I don't know if we're gonna go back. Probably not next year. I have mixed feelings about it for reasons that I won't unpack unless people want me to during Q&A. But it was cool. I'm glad I did it once. Learned a lot. We also very luckily got featured on Justin Wong's channel without any outreach. I actually saw him at CEO and asked him to play my game, and he said, yeah, sure, and then never did. So seeing him just find it organically a couple months later was very cool. Also, apologies. I know I said before the stream I turned off the fan. I have to turn it back on because I am getting very sweaty in my apartment. Apologies. Yeah, the funny thing is, he released it like a week after the September playtest, and we got a bunch of new people joining the Discord asking, how can I play? How can I play? And the footage was from August. But, you know, better late than never. Game changes have been continuing cleanup work on Gain and Book. We've been making some small move adjustments on all the characters. And I've been working on a framework for tutorials and combo trials. I can't guarantee that'll be ready for October 17th. I probably want to polish it a little bit more before I put it into players' hands, but very excited about it. I learned a lot from doing it for Tough Love Arena, and I'm trying to do it in a way that will also be easy for players to make their own combo trials that they can share, that will be easier to share. So if anyone has any suggestions on how to implement that, or other games that have implemented it in a way that you like, specifically like the UGC part of making combo trials, please let me know. I'd be happy to look into them to see what I can learn. But yeah, shareable trials is a big goal of mine, especially for a game like this with so much combo space. Strive has a search function with filters. Interesting. Yeah, I want to go through... Discoverability is one part. In particular, I'm really curious how the user experience is for making them. Because doing it myself, I've run into a few interesting challenges of like, which parts should be intentional, how do we want to start recording, that kind of stuff. Especially for games like this. Tough Love Arena, I started with the wrong assumption of like, you only have to check what hits. But there's a lot of times where like, as part of the combo trial, or as part of the tutorial, or as part of the, you know, user-made trial, you want to like bake in, like, you know, set up this projectile, do this thing, or do a knockdown and cancel it into a move that will put Oki on them. And that wouldn't normally get caught in a system that's just looking for like what made contact. So trying to make it more general is a big goal. Save states might be ready. Save states should be ready by October 17th. I'm still figuring out how to... The only problem with save states, I finally fixed a big bug with them. The problem with save states is we do a lot of asset loading in the background mid-match, just because we need to optimize for how much assets you're actually storing in RAM, or else nobody can run this game. So, for example, if you have Rosie point and Alistair second, while Rosie is on point, you have all of her sprites loaded. But while Alistair is on the bench, you only have like a third of his sprites loaded. You only have everything you would need to call him as an assist, including like if he gets hit or something, and to DHC into one of his supers and to raw tag. So you have all the sprites you should need while Rosie's on point. And then when you do DHC over, or when you do raw tag, in that, it then immediately starts unloading Rosie sprites and loading additional Alistair sprites. And it's fast enough that just in that small gap between, Alistair comes in and poses, or Alistair comes in and does a big beam super, that's usually enough time to cover it. But save states have the problem right now of, let's say your combo is that you start with Rosie point, and the combo you want to do involves her DHCing into Alistair beam. And you do it, and you fuck it up, they block the beam, so you hit load state. And then it tries to, next frame, start a game where Rosie's on point. It doesn't have her sprites loaded. It doesn't crash, but it does flicker black screen for a few seconds because it is potentially trying to draw sprites it doesn't have loaded yet, because it's not instant. So that might be bearable for users, because it is a pretty fringe case of, does your save state not match the current team layout? That's the problem. Only comes up very occasionally, but it is a bad user experience. So that even if we do have some hackiness, or if there is a flashing black screen, or we have to put in an awkward load screen, I'll probably have some version of that on October 17th just for use in training mode, for use there. But that is one of the challenges I've been having with it, and why I've had it as an internal dev tool for a while, but I haven't made it public yet, because it had that and it had some other bugs. Will save states persist between menus? Define menus. Beep. Right now it works if you pause to change some settings, but if you were to leave the match to go to character select or something, it would get lost. Right now they persist as long as a match is running. And then for combo trials, it will have a save state in the combo trial, so that the combo trial starts in this state. Save state on the main menu screen. No, it would not be available for switching stages. It could be. One of the... This is a tangent, but I think this is what you're here to listen to and learn about. One of the blockers we've had for desync detection when playing online is that the match state has two parts. There's the rollbackable part, and then there's the metadata part, which has your information about rollbacks, has some other stuff. And the problem was that there was some stuff in the rollbackable part, which is what I want to validate when checking for desyncs, that shouldn't have been in there. Namely, information about your controllers, which your opponent doesn't have that on theirs, and information about who was player 1 and player 2, which player am I, that's going to be different across both clients. And I've been moving all that stuff out, and one of them was the stage, because the stage doesn't have to be the same between both players. It shouldn't have to be. So I did recently move stage ID out of the match state. So theoretically, a save state is stage agnostic, so it could work across multiple stages. The problem is, in order to switch stages, you do have to leave the match, and it's in that meta state off to the side, outside of rollback, that I keep the save state, and that would get destroyed. So you'd have to explain like a pretty good use case for that. I can see it for like a combo video, I guess, but that's how that works. And now we start the Q&A. So if you have a question, please post it now. If you asked a question earlier, please post it again, because I will not scroll back up in the chat. And we will talk for a brief moment, for as long as people have questions and my voice holds out. And then I will take a brief break, and then we'll do a short dev stream. But before that break, any questions? Kerbo asks, will the Redbubble phone case still exist? Eyeball emoji. Yeah, and in fact, we could enable more printing options. The way Redbubble works is you just upload a design, and then they have like a million things that you can print it on. And as the design creator, I can choose if I want to explicitly turn on or off certain options, because like, oh, that's just, you could try to print our lemon logo on a shower curtain, but it'll look terrible because it's low res, so I'm just not going to let you do that. All we're doing is changing the designs. So the options should remain the same. If you have requests for additional options that were disabled in the past and you want to have enabled now, or that Redbubble has added in the last few years that weren't even an option to enable back when we first made the store in 2021, let me know. Thought asks, when will this be on YouTube? Soon. The last one took a minute, because honestly, my life has been very stressful for the past month, preparing for Japan and then being in Japan. I was there for 2 weeks. This one I can have up like tomorrow. So, stay tuned. Kerbo says, do you endorse any of TLA's currently widely accepted lore? Depends on the lore. I guess I endorse some of it. I mean, Kerbo, you're one of the people writing the new arcade mode. You're kind of defining the lore going forward, so that's up to you. Hope you've been well otherwise. Thank you, Thought. I have been. Just very tired. I'm very jet lagged, which is why I'm down to do a dev stream after this, because I woke up at 3 p.m. But I've been good. It was a good trip. So, Inside TV, how did TGS go? You did not miss that talk. I'm trying to decide how honest I want to be in a video that is going to be archived online. Because I don't want to be overly negative, but I don't want to be needlessly positive. We had a... Just lie, please. I will preface this as, like, I had a good time at TGS and attending and visiting Japan and the whole thing, and I don't regret it at all, and I had fun. But it was disappointing. It was disappointing. We know, because we collect the replay files, I won't tell you the numbers, but we know empirically like how many people play on our machines at conventions, because at the end I save all the replay files, and so I can measure like, okay, how many matches got played in one day, and I can do the math of like matches per setup per hour even. We had pretty consistent numbers for our previous 4 conventions, so Combo Breaker, CEO, Evo, and Anime NYC were all comparable, and anecdotally they were all very high traffic. There was always people at the booth. There were often lines waiting to play. They felt busy. I know from looking at the hard numbers that TGS was way lower traffic. There was a lot of time where I was just sort of sitting around making small talk with some of the other New York developers, and no one was playing the game. Now, I don't take this personally, and I don't take it as like a bad omen or anything about the state of our game, because thankfully I do have that, evidence from every other convention being a resounding success for us. And there were a lot of really interesting, unique situations about TGS that would explain why we had worse traffic. So They include, one, TGS is huge. It is, I did not realize how huge it was, both the number of attendees and the sheer venue space. It is very, very, very big. And on the one hand, that sounds good because there's way more attendees. But on the other hand, there is so much more to do that you could easily wander TGS for 4 days and have your day full of stuff, whether you're waiting in lines or playing demos or watching something or whatever, and never even make it to our booth because there's just that much to do. Second, related, TGS was split into 11 halls across 2 buildings. The main building was hall 1 through 8, and like generally the lower the number, the more popular you were. So like hall 1, 2, 3, 4 had like the Capcom booth, the giant Riot booth. I think maybe hall 5 had like the Arc Systems Works booth. And these were just the fighting game ones. They had like everything there. They had the Ghosts of Yotei, whatever that sequel is called. I walked around a bit while someone covered, and it was eye-opening just how much bigger the space was than like PAX East or any other convention. I guess compared to Level Up, which was a huge gaming expo out in Vegas that we worked back in April, it would still be like at least 2 times bigger if you include both buildings. So you already have this huge, it's like 3 buildings daisy chained for like hall 1 through 8. And then you go across like a 2-minute walk to get to the second building that has halls 9, 10, 11. And we were at the back of hall 11. So on an average day, just like foot traffic wouldn't actually reach us. People wouldn't start filling into our area until at least like a couple hours after opening. Just because it took that much time to get to us, and there's so much other stuff to see on the way. That hurt us. Just the sheer like location of our booth, which was not in our control. It wasn't in the control of the organizers who did it. Secondly, and there's a lot of reasons, but I'll give you, I think, the 3 most interesting ones. 1 is that it's so huge. 2, the language barrier. We made a lot of efforts to accommodate the players in terms of we had the translated handouts, we translated all the text in game, and I had on hand, through the New York organizers, a translator just there full time so that I could talk to the players through, this one layer. But even with all that, you could tell that it was difficult to connect with players. I had a couple of really nice conversations and a couple of people who were really into it, and it was nice, but it's just that much more friction from people having a chance to talk to me and connect with me and get that much more invested in the game. And a phenomenon we would often see at previous conventions is that you'll get 2 friends to come by on Friday, and they'll sit down and they'll try the game, and we'll talk, and they'll be like, oh, this is actually really fun, this is really cool. And then on Saturday, and then they leave because they want to do other stuff. And then on Saturday, they kind of like run out of stuff to do, so they swing by and check us out again while they're waiting for, the Tekken Top 32 to start or whatever. And then on Sunday, they'll come back and play even more. And maybe when they're coming back, they like tell some friends and they bring some friends. And we get a sort of network effect within the convention. And this really hurt that. The combination of both the lower traffic and the less people, and just the fact that we couldn't talk as often. And it didn't help that, and this is no shade on them, but our translator was not very technical. So, or, wasn't familiar with the genre at least. So there was a lot of like us trying to have a conversation through this person, and they're trying to like ask me about mechanics and ask me about similar games, and I'm saying like Marvel vs. Capcom, and the translator has no idea what I'm even saying, so they don't know how to translate it. Like, it was friction. There was a lot of friction. That just made it harder. The comment I put in the game Discord when I got back, or like right after the convention, was it felt like doing PAX on hard mode, essentially. These weren't bad, and these were great players, but it just felt like arbitrarily more difficult. And the last, I think, really interesting reason is what I'd call the convention culture. Um, I feel like when I'm walking around a PAX or fighting in convention, uh, it is very much. I see a bunch of things and I can approach whatever looks interesting. And it's interesting when you think about the history of conventions. There was a phenomenon, I want to say 10 years ago, 15 years ago, at PAX that we, for lack of better phrase, was called booth babes. Where I think one game in particular that did this was Lollipop Chainsaw. They hired like a supermodel to dress up as the titular character, who's like a Valley Girl cheerleader, and just sort of stand around the booth to attract nerds and like offer a photo op and stuff. And at a certain point, a lot of, at least PAX in specific, I know, sort of banned this. It was kind of weird. It created a weird vibe and some perverse incentives for developers, and that doesn't really exist there. And it very much hasn't seemed to be the norm at a lot of the conventions I attended. And that's not like the whole thing, but that to me is indicative of how you perceive booths. I walk by the Baldur's Gate 3 booth, and they have a cool photo op with a person in like amazing like squid costume. Compare that to, I go to TGS and I go to the Arc System booth to try Tokon, and I play a little bit of Tokon, and that's cool. And they have a ring of like 6, I wouldn't say scantily clad, but like, you know, perhaps immodestly dressed, attractive young women, flanking outside the booth, very aggressively trying to get people to come in, handing out free stuff, calling people out. It reminded me of walking around Midtown Manhattan, and you accidentally make eye contact with someone, and they immediately come up and they start trying to give you their mixtape. Everywhere in Tokyo Game Show felt like this. I got so much stuff just pushed into my hands. One in particular was this bag, nice canvas bag. This was for a like game dev college. So this isn't AAA studio. This was like a school, and they had a giant booth with all these TVs, and they were just giving out bags. I could have taken like 20 of these if I wanted to, because you're just walking by and they're shoving it into your hand, or they're you know, giving out stuff like this, or stuff like this. It's aggressive, and it creates two things. It creates a culture of, okay, everyone is doing this, so now this is how you have to compete. If you want to compete with the people giving out flyers, you have to give out canvas bags. But it also, which we were not prepared to do, but it also creates, I think, for the attendee, an atmosphere where you kind of want to avoid eye contact with people, because at a certain point you feel kind of harassed, and you're just like, okay, I want to get over to there, I want to go to that booth, I'm just kind of keep my eyes ahead and snake my way directly to there so that someone doesn't grab me. And we were not, you know, prepared to compete with that. We did not have dedicated barkers. So it's not so much about the babe part of like the booth babe comparison, but it's more of the like, there were people there at the booths whose express purpose was to sell the booth and pull you into the booth that had nothing to do with the game. They didn't work for the game. They were temps. They weren't even interns. They were people just hired for the booth. And that was very new to me. So all these things, again, really interesting convention. I'd recommend it as an attendee. But it really hurt our experience and the experience that I was expecting to get in terms of how many players we were able to get into our booth to try the game and try and convert into fans. When I look at how many people we got to play the game per day, per setup, and I compare that to a lot of the domestic conventions, I can't help but be sort of disappointed and have to just think like, okay, the convention itself is pretty affordable from an exhibitor standpoint. And Japan is affordable in general right now thanks to the exchange rate. But the cost of the travel is still pretty prohibitive. And so it's like, for the amount of benefit I got out of this, purely from an exhibiting standpoint, if I'm thinking about how to spend my marketing budget for my game, which is not infinite, would this money be better used on like 2 domestic conventions? Should I instead, or one big domestic one? I could have taken the money I used for TGS and instead boothed at PAX West, or maybe attended 2 mid-sized conventions, or another fighting game convention like Frosty. So in that perspective, it was disappointing. But I had a good time. And the handful of people who really got into the game, it was super fun to watch. We had good conversations. One person interviewed me, a YouTuber. Unfortunately, we were talking on email like a day or 2 ago, and his phone like broke, and he lost like all the footage and all the other interviews he did at TGS, and he's trying to recover it. So I don't know if anything will come of that. That was a bummer, but interesting event. And there's more I could say, but I will keep it at that. And I think that is sufficiently candid. I hope that answers your question, Inside TV. Anything else? And yeah, and you know, please don't give me your pity or anything else. I appreciate it, but it wasn't bad, and I had fun, and I feel very grateful that I'm in a place where like this wasn't make or break it for me. We've had all these other really successful convention appearances, and there are other reasons to go to TGS. It's actually, I'll say this, if you're an aspiring game developer, I feel like you can think of these conventions as either B2B or like B2C. Are you there to get players, or are you there to meet publishers? And I wish you lied more. In what way? Most conventions I go to are good for meeting players and marketing and getting Steam wish lists. You know, they're fun to do, but if you're trying to justify it in business terms for your budget and everything else, they're good for that purpose. You get playtesting, you get fans, you get wish lists, and you get to meet other developers, which is very useful and nice. Compare that to a convention like GDC, which is explicitly a B2B professional game developer event. Almost no one attends it who's there just to play your game. And in fact, you can exhibit there, but I don't usually recommend it because it's way lower just total attendee count than a consumer-facing convention. And that's just not your audience. The reason you go to GDC is to meet other game developers and to meet publishers. And it's really good at that. So GDC is not great for meeting players, but you know, conversely, going to EVO isn't great for meeting publishers. There's a few there, and you can try and make conversations happen, but like people go to GDC to do business. And I'll give TGS credit. It does both. They have 2 business days and 2 public days. So I didn't go in with any specific business goals because we already independently have funding, and the current plan is to self-publish. But I did get some business cards and have some interesting conversations and hopefully opened a few doors. And in that front, it was a totally valuable trip and worth doing. But for the above reasons, the previously stated reasons, I think the B2C fan experience was very disappointing. But if you are a game developer and you are looking for both these things, to both make fans and to meet publishers, and hopefully you can speak Japanese, I think TGS makes a lot of sense. Cool. Any other questions? Yes, that's the takeaway, Thought Buster. Very good. Clove asks, do you think conventions are more useful for fighting games compared to other types of games? Yes-ish. So, that's a longer question. Before I answer that, I just want to real quick say, welcome, Apple Boy. No pressure. Just feel free to hang out. You have a little bit more time if you can think of anything. Also, this is just what's going to go up on the Tough Love Arena YouTube channel. I'll be doing a dev stream afterwards, which, to answer your question, Kerbo, will be for Scramble Heart. So I'll be doing a Scramble Heart dev stream right after this, and you can always hang out more and chat then. Clove, getting back to Clove's question. I am convinced after attending these more general game conventions, because I've attended both. I go to the PAXs and the Level Ups and the TGSs, and then I go to the fighting game specific stuff like Combo Breaker, Evo, CEO. And I think fighting games are better positioned for exhibiting than a lot of other indie games I've seen. Because if your goal is to get people to try your game, to, create fans, farm wish lists, get playtests, get feedback, having a game that is multiplayer, is quick to play, and looks poppy and actiony are all really important. So I don't think fighting games are necessarily the best genre, but anything that's also very arcadey that you can sit down and play, especially with friends, is just gonna churn in a good way. It's gonna go through a lot more players than if you're there to show off your kind of psychological narrative game where people put on headphones and they sit there and they're reading dialogue for 20 minutes. I think people who try to take those to conventions just have a harder time. It has its own value, and I don't want to deny them the convention experience, but anecdotally, I have felt that we usually do better in terms of just, traffic. And other arcade games generally do better traffic-wise than narrative-focused games, single-player games. I think puzzle games can still work. Right next to us in the New York booth was actually it was kind of like Puyo, but with math. It was really cute. I really liked it. And they also had a Tetris Attack versus mode, but you could do it single player. And that had really great traffic because people could just walk by, see it, be like, oh, that's Puyo with, fractions. That's interesting. It'd be you'd have a target, which is okay, this level you're doing multiplication, you have to make 12. So anytime you could line up numbers that multiply up to 12, it would clear. And people could see that and immediately grok it, and it's simple controls, and they'd sit down and they'd play it and they'd have fun. As opposed to something that's trying to ask you to commit more time to sit down and process something. And also it's very solitary, so if you're with friends, it seems awkward if you sit down and put on headphones and they're just sitting there watching you play. I think narrative games are at a disadvantage in that context. That said, all of that said, so I still think, qualified in a million ways, I think fighting games are well positioned for the convention demo environment. I have also felt, after attending much of these, that generally I want to just go to fighting game stuff. Because although you'll get players, what kind of players are you looking for? When we do Anime NYC, when we did Tough Love Arena at PAX back in the day, because we took that to PAX East and PAX West, when I did Level Up Expo, April of this year, I think I've done a few other really small general gaming conventions, like One Upstate. When I take fighting games to those, I still get good traffic, and I get good amount of people coming and trying it because it looks, colorful and fun, and especially when I have the big arcade sticks out, that's novelty. But it's a lot of one and doneers. A lot of people who will play it, be like, oh, I don't really play fighting games. They'll mash for 1 minute, maybe think it's cool, maybe I'll get a wish list, but they're not going to buy the game. Wish lists alone are a useful thing to farm because they influence the Steam algorithm, and they're a good number to bring to publishers as a projection of potential future sales. Wish lists are very valuable, even if the people don't convert. But I felt compare a Anime NYC this year to East Coast Throwdown last year, we objectively had way more players at Anime NYC. but the value we got out of an average player in terms of like converting, both seeing like play testing, getting feedback that way, which thankfully is less critical now that we have online working, but we didn't for the first year. So getting like play testing, watching people play it, getting that sort of feedback, watching people really explore it and then potentially become like super fans that will then evangelize and bring other people to the booth and join the Discord. Like the likelihood of getting that at a fighting game convention is, 10x. So even if East Coast Throwdown we had half the traffic, then we still had 5x the meaningful conversions, to do some rough math, right? That has sort of convinced me to prioritize fighting game events. That's why we haven't taken Scramble Heart to PAX yet, because PAX is expensive. It's a good event to go to because there's a lot of people. It also has a small element of the B2B. Publishers do go. You can try to like meet publishers and make business there. But after going to Level Up, which was a great, huge convention and very affordable, but just noticing that like the amount of investment I got from the players and how far they would get into the experience was just so much worse than going to a fighting game convention, I've deprioritized them. I basically only do Anime NYC because it's in my backyard and a lot of my friends are there. And I did TGS because a bunch of my friends were going and there was the novelty and I wanted to try it once. But that's another reason that makes me hesitant to even go back. Now, to that end, we are planning to apply for PAX Rising at PAX East. Now, this is a program where it's application, your game is reviewed, but if you get accepted, you get a free booth in a special little Rising area. It's not quite the normal booth. It's kind of smaller and more constrained, but it's free and it's kind of highlighted. TGS had a similar thing called Indie 80 that one of my friends did. Gus, he makes the game Waxwing, which is a cool little like light gun shooter. He did Indie 80 this year, and he had a great experience. He said he had good traffic because they were not in the back of Hall 11, and they were in an area with like branding of like check out indie games, where we were like right next to a random like gaming school and some other like people trying to sell some stuff. So that like extra advantage in sort of the venue placement and the fact that if the booth is free instead of PAX's booth normally cheapest option being I think about $2,500 these days, that is enough reason to go to PAX. But at that cost, unless we're going because like we just released the game and we're trying to like actively drive sales or actively like find a publisher to help us with porting or localizing, because we have fighting game conventions, I don't think that they're worth it. Purely just the opportunity cost of, again, I can only afford the time and money for X amount of conventions a year. If you are making a not fighting game, indie game, and you want to take it to conventions, take it to PAX. Take it to MagFest, take it to Level Up, take it to whatever you can. I still really think the convention experience is valuable, even if you have a narrative game, even if you have a game that you feel like may not present well. You should go. You should try it if you can afford it. But that is where my head is currently at after having done a lot of these for a couple years, for both Tough Love and Scramble Heart, is unless I have a really good reason to attend one of the general ones, like it's cheap, I'm better off spending that time and money going to fighting game stuff. Clearly I have a lot of opinions on this, so hopefully that's interesting. Thought asks, on the real, love the insight. Anyways, how are you liking the process of both games? The process. Can you rephrase the question? I don't understand. Better question for SHC. When will CPU battles be in the game? Might be good for your one and doneers. That's another good point for fighting games. Like, we can't really do we can't do solo players. We'll often try to, in that case, like Bark another solo player, or when we're lucky enough to have like a really packed booth like at Anime NYC and there's multiple people waiting, then we can easily coordinate 2 solos. Or we just have one of us fight the solo person until another solo person walks up, and then we'll hop off. You make it work. The biggest problem with having CPU that I feel like I only really solved with Tough Love eventually was building a simple enough experience for the event that's really easy to switch between fighting a CPU and fighting a human. As soon as you ask them to like navigate menus, it becomes super error prone, and people can get stuck and get confused, and you just have to manage it way better. We eventually reworked Tough Love to have the cabinet mode that we used for our Wonderville cabinet of like press start to play. And even then some people got confused and they wouldn't know how to join and play. But having CPU is definitely a bonus. In terms of timing when we're going to add it to Scramble, I don't know. Before launch is really all I can say. It's really important, but I don't want to do it the way I did in Tough Love. I think there has to be a better way to do it than I did with Tough Love, because Tough Love CPU is not great. And there's small things I can make to improve that in the design approach I took, but I think that there's got to be a better way. That's also an area where theoretically I might hire another developer to help me with. Because that's something that I think I could parallelize easily. While I'm still working on combat and game systems, they can just be working on the CPU that then works off those game systems. So that is something we have budgeted for, and will probably come later, either late this year or sometime next year. That can be a good fit for someone to help me build. Because I'll recognize my weaknesses, and clearly from Tough Love, I wasn't great at solving that problem. So, Mint progress. How are you liking the progress of both games? So I really want you guys. Why am I saying guys? I really want Tough Love Arena to be out, as I mentioned earlier in this Tough Love Arena dev stream. We will hopefully be out of beta next month. I will be slowing down Scramble Heart work a little bit to focus back on Tough Love Arena and make sure we can get it out the gate. Yes, Meep, almost 5 years. Assuming we can get it out in November and everything works well, I might try and like rebrand the birthday tournament into a bigger post-launch thing. I'm not going to try and squeeze in a launch tournament last minute in December, so we'll just like replace the birthday one. And then I'll think about how best I want to sort of scale down support, which has already been pretty scaled down, because I just don't have the bandwidth to work on both. I have a lot of responsibilities for Scramble Heart. I'm the main programmer, I'm the game designer, I'm the game director. Thankfully, I've hired more people, and that's helped me offload some of these responsibilities, but it is an ongoing battle against time. So I am eager to sort of be able to put a pin in Tough Love and say, I finished it, I'm very proud of it, it exists there, you can still play it for free on web, and then be able to fully focus on the new game. And this is only possible thanks to the volunteers, Clove, Dab, and Kerbo, who have helped make this possible. Scramble I'm very pleased with. We're doing good. I'll say I want us to have more playable characters at this point. What we've been doing for the last couple months, is we've been prioritizing trying to finish cleaning Gain and Book. I want to have one of the things I'll plug in the dev stream is the finished art for Rosie's Beyblade Air Special. I want to get those 3 characters completely done, so that then we can start recording footage for like trailers for Steam page that have all finished art and variety. Because right now, if you want to record the game and not have any placeholder art, you kind of only have to do Rosie mirrors and then just never get a soft knockdown or use her air special. So that I think is the most important priority in terms of like unblocking like marketing opportunities and being able to really present a strong vertical slice if and when we do need to approach publishers next year for additional funding or console support or whatever else. I think that's like a blocker. We need to have that. We need to have a fully presentable version of the game and the vision. As soon as we finish that, we will be getting back over to prototyping characters. Character 6, Goth, her moveset's already completely planned out, and I might start actually working on implementing her mechanics, even if I don't have any art for it, because she is going to have new advanced mechanics. We have basically character designs for the next 3 characters and broad strokes design plans. One of them we're calling Tyrant, and these are all like the playtest names. They'll have real names later, in the same way that Gain was called Robot and Harmony was called Shadow. So these are all playtest names, temporary names, but I think it's safe to reveal, Goth is next because she's ready to go. Tyrant, who is going to be another big antagonist story-wise, and I think if I can get it to work, has some pretty... He's going to be simpler to play, but he's going to have some like very esoteric mechanics that I'm very excited for if I can get them to work. Just like icing on the cake. But otherwise, like a straightforward, like a brawler. A random item character that I think we're just calling like items right now. And a fast execution character. So this way, if you want to play full Rushdown, now you'll have 3 options of Rosie, Gain, and this guy. I don't know if we have a name for him yet. Because he is changing a lot. I was really committed to a few kind of funny ideas, and then we tried to think through them more, me and Savvy, and I may have been talked out of them. We haven't talked about this guy since before Japan, so it's also like I'm still catching back up on the context. But broad strokes, it'll probably be a guy with 2 swords. So, swords, plural. I don't know. Those are the current plan. And I think that segues into another question that was coming up. But real quick, I'm going to get water. This will take 5 seconds. Great YouTube content. Blah, 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 blah. Blah, 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 blah. I'm drinking out of this water bottle because I froze it earlier, so it's like half ice. Anyways, it means I run out of water pretty fast. Inside TV says, I'm literally here because you guys left the Scramble setups out in Jabali Land. Yes, that is another great thing. I strongly encourage that if you are a game developer, fighting game or otherwise, and you want to be presenting at conventions, have a track mode, have something to draw people in when people aren't actively playing it. We don't even have CPU. Our compromise is that we replay the previous match. And build it as baby-proofed as possible so that people can come into it when you're not even there and play the game. People could leave it in a weird state, and it has some way of like resetting itself so that people can come up 5 minutes later and play the game. This also just, even if it's not a 24-hour con, this frees you if you're a solo person to like go to the bathroom, or if you want to run and grab food. And you can ask someone to cover, but they won't know your game. They'll just make sure your stuff doesn't get stolen. Like, these are things that are super valuable to invest time in. We learned this the hard way through a lot of trial and error on Tough Love Arena. Taking that on the road to PAX East, PAX West, Defend the North, Combo Breaker. We were at Evo twice. Yeah, we did a lot of conventions for TLA. And the demo experience changed a lot. A man named Graham says, hi, first-time caller, long-time listener. When is the last time you had a bowl of Waffle Crisp? It's been a couple years. It's been long enough ago that I don't remember. I lived at some apartment where I had easy access, and that was probably the last time I had it. And that might have been Waterside, so back in 2022? Clove asks, how many Scramble characters have you concepted? Also, how's the design process split between you, art, other people? That's sort of what I answered before. So we have a pretty strong character design for Tyrant and rough mechanical design. Pretty strong character design for items and rough mechanical design. And double sword guy, we're still nailing down both. The design process is usually a long iterative process with Savvy, the main person who this game relies on. Our lead artist and animator and character designer has been with me since the beginning. I'll usually come to him with a vague mechanical idea and what I think would be a good general visual archetype to go with it, to support it, but usually not married to it. And then he will spend some time brainstorming. Sometimes I come in more dedicated than others. Items, I had no idea on what they would look like, or what gender they would be, or if they'd be human or anything. I was just like, I want these mechanics. What's a design that we could maybe use that would support that and, isn't repeating something we've already done. Savvy will usually prepare a handful of drafts or vague ideas and bring it back to me for sort of notes. And I'll usually pick one that I'm a huge fan of with a few notes on top of I like this one, but change this and that. And then we'll go back and forth a bunch of times until we find something we like. And so Savvy's doing a lot of the ideation, and when I'm giving notes, it's still like a conversation. I give him a lot of autonomy and a lot of ownership over these designs. So I like to think of it as usually I'll give him the starting point and then I'll steer him. But he'll own the designs, and I just choose what I steer away from certain ideas and towards others. And it's a lot of fun. We had the goth conversation. We had a bunch of ideas. She's changed a lot, and she hasn't even started. We've already mentioned she's the zoning character. She's going to be projectile zoning. And he had a character design idea that then inspired me to have some new mechanical ideas. You may have already seen in the art we've shown for her that she has a little bunny thing on her head. So I had all these ideas about how Bunny would become this complicated additional projectile resource that she had access to. Her projectile resources used to be very complicated, and then I sort of dialed a lot of that back as I thought more through the ramifications. So it's a long and winding process. And some of the characters that have had a lot of revisions have been just ones that we're kind of rushed through it because we wanted to get a character out or because we needed to hit some sort of deadline. And I'm trying to do less of that going forward, just so that Savvy spends less time spinning his wheels making art that we're going to throw away. We threw away a lot of art for Spear. And we're throwing away some art for Harmony because she had a really strong identity for 40% of her character, and then a lot of open question marks. And we're finding her in the process, and I'm really excited about some new changes that will hopefully be ready for the playtest, if not definitely in November, that we were just discussing 2 hours ago. It's fun, and I feel like we both get better at it as we go along. But we've got plenty of ideas to implement, and I trust that in the year plus it will take us to finish all those characters, I'll have time to come up with new ideas. Inside asks, any plans on a puppet character? Almost certainly not. I think the most puppety I want to get is kind of like Book. Book started as much more puppety in terms of you would send the book out and then you would manipulate it while it was out, and you could teleport to it, and it was this second resource that you were or second body that you would actively manage. And I think a lot of the advantages you get from a puppet character and a lot of the unique gameplay situations and so reasons you'd want to put it in the game are kind of already provided by assists. It's not one-to-one. I don't want to, devalue public characters, but I think they're more interesting in a context without assists. And being in a multiplayer game kind of makes them feel less special than they normally do. And also just from a complexity standpoint, I have to be really careful about not making a character that is so complex that almost no one plays them. Like, I think those characters are really important and they're really cool, but in a tag team game on an indie budget, I really can't afford to waste a slot on the character select screen with a very niche character. So that's why I've tried to be, even with like the zoner that we're working on and the item character we have planned, and like Tyrant, I'm trying to create systems for them that will give advanced players a lot of room for expression. So I'm trying to give them that high ceiling, but I'm also trying to give them like a pretty high floor. I'm trying to make sure that like they have a basic game plan that works, and the additional execution complements it. Whereas puppet characters tend to have a pretty low floor in terms of like, if you're not using the puppet, this character just sucks. And that's a big problem with like characters that are so, when you want to have a mechanic gated behind like execution and mastery, like puppets, or like a stance character, or even like a level up character where you have this like really strong version of the character that is either very difficult to do or you have to unlock mid-game, then to sort of complement that and make it balanced, the other version has to be kind of weak, or else this character is just, an average character that gets way stronger. That's not fair. They become the best character. But a lot of people are only going to experience the weak side. So we've tried to design a level up character a bunch of times. Two Swords Guy might be a level up character. That's one of the ideas we had for him. Tyrant might be a level up character. But we're trying to think about ways to design level up mechanics that still feel rewarding, but don't feel necessary. Which is difficult. It's difficult to do both. Table, this is a general Q&A for all of MPAL games, so TLA and Scramble Heart. Appleboy asks, are there any plans to add voice lines to Scramble Heart? If so, what is something you definitely want a character to say? We definitely want to have voice lines. We've been putting off recording because I want to have more of the roster defined, because I want to record call-outs, so they need to know each other's names. So I need to know what those names are. But we have the budget set aside for VO. I've been collecting voice actors' resumes at all these conventions to eventually reach out to. The one... I need Book to say something. Even though he's going to be pretty like aloof and kind of cool, when he parries someone, I need him to say something along the lines of like, I read you like a book. Like, it's super cheesy and corny. I couldn't even like say it, but like that's the point. That's like the joke. I need him to say something like that. That's probably the one I'm most that's most dear to me. That feels a little long. It could be like, I can read your movements. I don't know. Maybe he just shouts the reads. I want players to shout that, not the character to play that. Say that. Read you like a me. Just have the book say predictable. I want to have some Mimi lines like that in there. It might be fun to have Rosie say believe it. Adapted bio. Other than that, catch this. Yeah, hope you like this. I'll definitely try to put in like a few jokey Mimi reference lines. If I have a character that makes sense, like this might be a good fit for the Two Swords character, to have him have, if he has like an install or a power up state where he says like, I'm really motivated. I don't know if I can help myself. I might have to do that. But other than that, mostly just thinking about like how is this going to represent their personality. Rosie being kind of cocky and very, anime protagonist coded, shonen protagonist coded. Book being kind of chill. That's the only problem with like how do I do the read you like a book without it like being like patronizing. I'm not sure. Harmony being like pretty aloof depending on the move, and then like really vicious on other moves, that kind of stuff. I don't know what we're gonna do with Gain. It could be interesting for him to not have a voice. But yeah, that's the extent to which I've thought it through. Meep says the new 2S thing. I think I can show this. This is getting pretty off TLA related, but I think it's fine. The images are all messed up. Yeah, okay. It's really messed up in a bunch of ways. We're fixing that. But the important part is this. So my thought is that while she's in her install mode, doing it again gives you that super, but it's a tracking version. And I'm not, oh my god. Thank you. All right. So now you can see this madness. Not indicative of how the game works. Currently debugging some asset packing issues. But if you activate or install, which you can see kind of, split in half, and then you try and do it again, it gives a tracking version of the hand super. Because this was the original intent with this super, was that it would always be tracking. But then that felt too strong. That felt too like, oh, full screen punish. So I think hiding it and locking it behind the install fixes both the issue of like what happens if you install twice, gives her a sort of like 2 meter cash out situation, and we can potentially revert the damage back to how it used to be. And then also lets me do something different with her neutral super, which I will keep a surprise. And I should have ready for the playtest. Okay. Table asks, what if Books 2S brings that back, since Flame Super is being removed? Brings what back? The Hope You Like This, or the puppeting, or... Not sure what you're talking about. And the Flame Super, I've been recently thinking about if I can just rework it. One idea I had is changing it from a like full-on Virgil Swords that's just permanently active for X amount of time to something more like Rose's Ultra 2 from Street Fighter 4 of you have like 3 flames. And they could potentially last even longer, but they control for much less time, and it's a finite resource. That might fix some of the issues I have with it. It will have different issues. But the thing I don't like about it right now is just the like, okay, now you have to block for 4 seconds. If I make it, just 3 orbs, that can still be very valuable, especially if you get them sort of indefinitely until they get used. But it makes the mix a lot shorter. Kerbo says, are you still entertaining the SHC item thrower idea? Yes, I mentioned that earlier, but my plan that I really want to do is instead of an item toss, the best analog would be, it'd be more like Platinum the Trinity from BlazBlue, where you get a random weapon that then you use potentially multiple times in the future. So, or even if it works, honestly, like a big inspiration was the fan mod for Noodle in this year's Tough Love Arena April Fool's tournament and event, where Noodle could equip a random item, and then the next time you did the special, it deployed that item. I really prefer that design of like load and then use then a sort of like Faust, just toss, and it's random at the time of tossing. You sort of have to react immediately. The important thing I want to have is the loading and using. And then also I want to explore the space of like, I think Platinum does this. If you have an item loaded, you could like do a super to charge up that item. And so you could have like a super version of items. That's what her down super would be. That part I'm really excited about. So that's how it would work. Chapter 2. Catch this. Good voice recommendations. Ooh, I could do the voice acting for Beat Boop. Curvo says, hold this real quick before unleashing the Chromebook killer of infinite pops. Clove says, I think I saw a screenshot of a sketch of a goth sprite that looked kind of like beef pork. Is that intentionally a reference? I think I might have told Savvy to draw. She has this little bunny friend, and an idea we're experimenting with is her stronger normals, because she's a frail little girl, is that her stronger normals is Bunny sort of attacking for her. And one of them, I think I might have told Savvy, like, okay, I want that, like, pork musculature. But I might have referenced something else. People telling me that they can't see the demo I just did. Kerwo says Flamesuper should become that one Manat V-trigger. You release them with negative edge. Table says, is the book able to literally be push block to full screen on multi-hits, by the way? I don't remember. This has been changed a lot back and forth. It's a combination of experimenting with moves that just straight up, like, not disable, but like ignore push blocking. And the fact that push blocking used to have startup. You enter block stun, but even if you press the input right away, it wouldn't fire right away. You would push block like on frame 5 or later of block stun, was I think what used to be the case. And that meant for moves that really kept you in hit, especially projectiles where you had hit stop and Book didn't, like his Flame Super, they would essentially keep you locked in block stun for so long, or keep refreshing before you could actually get a push block out. You would be pressing the button, it just wouldn't come out because you never got to frame 5 of block stun. It just, you kept going 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 2 as you blocked the flames. I'm trying to find a balance because on the one hand, when you can't push block the multi-hits, it feels too strong. When you can push block all of them, it feels kind of too weak. Like, oh, I sent out my cool multi-hit and now I'm full screen. So that might be on like a move-by-move basis. I'm not certain yet. When will the song's gonna release? That is up to our composer M. I cannot comment on that. Table says, also this is intended to be TLA, and you're interested. Could you check the extra frame traps given by the sheer length of the car 5L window, Trample in particular? Sure. So, I believe what you're talking about is there you go. So, slap, the second hit does 18 frames of block stun. You have, this is probably a little off because it doesn't know how to report for multi-hits, but let's say you have 12 frames. This might be like up to the second hit, I'm not sure. So let's say you have 12 frames of recovery. The change was that you can basically cancel like way into that. And Trample has 8 frames true startup. So before you were either going straight from slap into Trample early on in the cancel window, and because it does 18 frames of block stun, and Trample has 8 frames of startup, if you can't cancel later than 10 frames, then that's like a true block string. There is no frame trap. you just auto block it, even if you're mashing. Now you could easily delay it to be anywhere from giving you a small gap to a big gap. Table, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. That is a thing. And the main difference, a lot of characters, the other 4 characters, the non-card characters, can frame trap with their lights because they're +1, and they leave you pretty close. But Slap, being 2 hits, and the first hit having such limited range, means they struggle to frame trap with it, because by the time you've pushed them out, the first frame, if you try to slap again, it will just whiff. Or, as Table says, yeah, Slap can frame trap into itself once. So, in terms of when frame traps are useful, they're useful because they can catch mashing and or they create a situation of, do I, try to reversal or parry this? So this gives Noodle an opportunity to frame trap you an additional time or from further away than they previously could. Let me read the Table's typing a bunch. Let me catch up. Yeah, that was the change for Book in terms of the push block. Noodle used to kind of lose their turn on far 5L in some matchups, and now they can frame trap into an unscaled starter, which is safe on block and easy to confirm RC thanks to it. The unscaled starter is an interesting point, because, yeah, the other characters who frame trap, and granted, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure Beef and Onion can also theoretically frame trap with their 5L into 5H, right? It's not usually advisable because you could just do another L, but they could do the same thing. No? Or do they not have... Spices cannot. Is the cancel window just not big enough? So, in terms of this, existing in the game already, other characters can have the opportunity, but that is a big difference. If most frame traps right now threaten a scaled starter, but Noodle doesn't, that is a strong buff. So I believe I understand the big gameplay ramifications made by this change. That does not concern me as is, but I will also fully admit that, I do not have the pulse of the game. I have not. I used to enter TLGs myself. I would play online. I have not played TLA since this balance patch went live. So I'm aware it's a concern of you and a few other players, Table. Sorry we didn't do a survey this month, but I know it was brought up in previous ones. I can at least promise you that I will be keeping an eye on it during the tournament this Friday, the Halloween tournament. But I don't want to nerf something yet that I'm not convinced is a problem. But your concern, I understand your concerns now fully. So thank you for raising them. Last chance for questions. That's fair. Thank you, Table. Just trying to be fair. So recap, because we've been at this for a minute. We have Halloween tournament this Friday for Temple Arena. Definitely check it out if you can. We're aiming to launch sometime. We're aiming to release the arcade mode, maybe with some, rough edges. But we're planning to release it to wide use in late October, and then hopefully releasing the full game, getting it out of beta sometime in November. And that will include new merch more new merch options in our Redbubble store. And if you want to play the Scramble Heart playtest, the next playtest is October 17th, which is in 10 days. So I will end it there. Table's question, show the new book 5B. I'll just do that in the follow-up stream. So I'm going to shut things down, stop recording. This will go up on YouTube. And then after I run to the deli and grab some snacks, I will do a brief Scramble Heart dev stream where we can show that off, and I can take any further questions about Scramble Heart there. So, as always, thank you everyone for stopping by. I hope this has been enjoyable. It is a privilege to have enough people in chat and enough interest to, have an hour plus of Q&A. And I never take that for granted. So thank you. And I'm really excited about arcade mode. I hope you all are too. Thanks to, in the chat right now, Clove and Kerbo, two of the people working on it. So, very exciting stuff. Hopefully we'll be able to discuss it next day of the game. So if I don't see you at the tournament this Friday, I'll see you next month. Good night.